This week is LME Week in London, the world's largest annual gathering of miners, traders and producers that descend upon the capital. One metal is perhaps more important than any other, that's copper, which this year has fallen to 6-year lows due to weak demand in China, the world's biggest consumer. Here to join me today is Oscar Landerecci. He's chairman of Codelco, the world's largest copper producer and a state-owned company in Chile. Oscar, thanks very much for joining me. As you know, copper prices have fallen to a 6-year low this year. And I just wondered if you could talk us through some of the steps that you at Codelco, being the world's biggest copper producer, are taking to deal with this period of low prices.
Yes, well, it's a pleasure to be here. I think what's important to stress is that Codelco has a long-term investment schedule that is very important for the company. If one looks at Codelco, one has to recognize that most of the action is concentrated in 3 of its largest divisions, and which are Chuquicamata, Teniente, and Andina. These 3 divisions are undergoing some very important investment schedules. We call them structural investments that are to be executed during the next couple of years.
As the world's #1 producer, you also have considerable influence over the price. We've seen Glencore and other miners cut production, leave metals in the ground. Will you take steps to cut production if the price continues to go down?
Well, if prices go down in a more structural way, not a short-term fluctuation, we're going to have to look at some of our more marginal operations. But the core of Codelco isn't really, the core of Codelco's production in the short term isn't really in the margin. So people shouldn't expect Codelco to change very dramatically its production during the next couple of years. Quite frankly, Codelco has been producing basically the same amount for over 10 years. And the investments we're doing are so that we can continue producing at those levels and a little bit more in the future. So we cannot take off the table adjustment measures because, of course, things can get complicated at some point. But at this point, we believe that the main scenario is for Codelco to continue producing basically at the same levels we've been producing, 1.6 to 1.7 million tons approximately.
And just wanted to get your view on copper prices. I mean, we're at LME week now, the mood is very negative. China is clearly slowing. No one sees any other country coming close to replacing China for copper demand. China consumes 45% of the world's copper. India is only about 2%. I mean, the future does look quite bleak. I mean, do you see any recovery in copper prices?
I would say that the short term looks, the short and I don't know what medium term looks bleak, but I don't think that the future of copper looks bleak at all. I think that there is a structural demand for the commodity. The commodity is very important for development in general, even in industrialized countries. So in the long term, the demand will be there, and most people agree with that, and I certainly do. But there is a couple of years of a more moderate scenario. I think that if you analyze in detail the supply curve and look at the trends in demand, you have to recognize that there's a big sort of flat part of the supply around the prices we have now. Quite frankly, there's a lot of producers around where we are at this point. So this means that depending on circumstance of each firm, of how these firms do in other markets, on their liquidity constraints, people will be considering adjusting or not, and it may take a little longer. I think my central scenario is for copper to be sort of fluctuating in the range between 2 and 2.5 dollars per pound for a couple of years, and we should plan around that.
So you think it's still good for Chile to bet its future on copper?
I don't think Chile should bet its future on copper. I really don't think that. I think we should diversify. I think we need to develop our productive base. What I'm talking about is one of our investments, which is Codelco. I think it's a good policy to invest in those structural projects. But I do not think that Chile should continue only a strategy that emphasizes copper. In a way, I think we should use copper to go away from copper.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.